Bitcoin is up 162%. Dominance is up to 54%, sparking signs of the upcoming altcoin rally. Pomp talks about Wall Street and Bitcoiners pumping the market. Estimates of the ETF approvals inflows are $600 billion. FTX is trying to relaunch their exchange after getting $7 billion back. And Binance faces an outage for their withdrawals. Hey everybody, welcome back to Crypto Daily. So over the weekend, we obviously had some exciting news for Bitcoin. So since the last episode, the Bitcoin price is up about $6,000 from 28K to 34K. So we've seen obviously some great price action in the market for Bitcoin, and dominance is up a lot. So we'll talk about that. First thing is from Michael Saylor. So he's talking about the Bitcoin price. Obviously, he's talking about it since MicroStrategy adopted their Bitcoin strategy, which was to hold it as a reserve asset and basically collateralize the stock and buy more Bitcoin. So Bitcoin doing pretty well since MicroStrategy got involved, up 162%. And in that same period of time, the S&P was up 25%. So definitely some great performance from Bitcoin in the last couple of years, despite feeling like a crazy crypto winter. And I've seen a ton of really funny memes about, Bitcoin at 35K in the last cycle. And, we're like Wolf of Wall Street on the top of our yachts, making it rain. And Bitcoin now at 35K, and we're all feeling the pain. We're all in the winter. I saw some funny Jason Momoa memes about that. So kind of interesting to see the difference in the market, despite the price being the same as last time. Obviously, just the feeling of being in a prolonged bear market. When we come out of those bear markets and we get into a bull market, we often see Bitcoin pretty much every time. The Bitcoin dominance always leads the market. So, Bitcoin leads the market in terms of price action. It goes up the most at first. So Bitcoin dominance has been climbing. We're at 54% right now. And that dominance just keeps going up. And we bottomed out, I think, around 40%. And I'll show you another tweet that talks about that. But, a lot of people eye that like 60 to 65% range as being kind of the flip when you start to see a lot of momentum go to altcoins. So when that happens, obviously the altcoins start to break out. And a lot of traders are looking to make a lot of profit in Bitcoin and then flip it into altcoins and time the market. So kind of interesting. Like I said, I feel like we're on the verge of this kind of bull market season that we've seen many times in the past. And if it plays out the way it typically plays out, you'll see, Bitcoin continue to lead the market probably for the next, couple weeks, couple months, however long this, this phase lasts. And then, when we see that dominance creep up to 60%, you might start to see a lot of altcoins break out as people make this kind of preemptive trade of hey, Bitcoin dominance is at 60%, time to flip back into altcoins. That tends to happen a lot. So Will Clemente posted back in September 2022 talking about the low of Bitcoin dominance at 40%. So kind of signaling like you could make this really interesting trade of buying Bitcoin with your altcoins at this kind of dominance level. And then if you trade the dominance back to, where we are in the current stage of the bull market, you might make some profits in terms of sats. So I know a lot of people who make those trades and they do pretty well. Kind of a cool macro trade that you can make every cycle. So like I said, I'm kind of eyeing this like as we creep up to 60% level, but definitely a lot of people keeping their eyes on the altcoin markets. As you probably know, a lot of people hold a lot of altcoins looking for the bigger profits. So on CNBC, they've started to cover Bitcoin a lot, which is always, what happens in the bull market. So when the bear market begins, they're covering Bitcoin like crazy. Every single day they're talking about how shitty Bitcoin is and how it's going down in price. And is it going to 10K? They always have like the funny videos. So now they're back. And they're talking about, is Bitcoin going to 100K? They're back on their cyclical. Everything is cyclical at the end of the day, even, news cycles. So they're back to their, cyclical nature of covering Bitcoin on a daily basis and giving these crazy bull predictions and talking about it. And Pomp was on this morning. This is a pretty long clip, and it was pretty good. It was 12 minutes long, and he talked about a lot of different things. But one of the key things that stood out to me was talking about how Wall Street and Bitcoiners are kind of working together, which is a lot different than the past where like Bitcoiners were always like fighting for the mainstream adoption. And now it's like, Bitcoiners are already holding Bitcoin, and, just crypto people are holding Bitcoin. And now like the big dogs, the Wall Street players are coming in, and they have this potential market of capturing, billions of dollars in trading fees. So they have plenty of incentives to, build out this market. And I think they've started to kind of realize, sorry, it started playing. I think they started to kind of realize that they could tap into this emerging market and start making a ton of profits. So we're going to start seeing, big Wall Street players coming in. We're already kind of seeing it happen. Larry Fink is promoting Bitcoin when he goes on, news channels. He was just on Fox, like 2 weeks ago, talking about how Bitcoin is a flight to quality, which is just insane to hear from obviously such a big player in TradFi. I mean, he's, when it comes to TradFi, they, you're not really trading your own money. So think of them less so as investors and think of them more so as, employees. And when they start talking about something like Bitcoin or any emerging asset class, they're risking their career to talk about it because they could get fired. They could, if they lose money, if they, buy into something that's bad, like it's pretty crazy for them to back something like Bitcoin. So when these big players come in, it's going to happen really fast. And speaking of them coming in, a lot of people are estimating that like $600 billion is going to be the inflow number in new demand for Bitcoin. Obviously you can never really predict what the inflows are going to be. But I've seen like a whole range of inflows. Some people think, $1 trillion. Some people think 600 billion. Some people think 100 billion. So at the end of the day, I don't think you can really predict what the inflows are going to be. But if you consider that there's like a collective $25 trillion in assets under management by the big funds that have all moved for the Bitcoin ETFs, and then just assume that like 1 or 2% of, that 25 trillion will actually buy into Bitcoin, that's about $100 billion. I think it's like 50 billion to 100 billion if it's 1 to 2% coming into Bitcoin. So no matter how you slice it, it's bullish for Bitcoin. The question is, how bullish is it for Bitcoin? I think the main thing that we're going to start seeing is more liquidity and, kind of a lot less volatility in the Bitcoin price, in my opinion. Once these ETFs are launched, once the initial craze is kind of over, I think the volatility of Bitcoin is going to drop a lot. It's still going to be crazy volatile compared to other asset classes, but I think it's going to be a lot less volatile than the past. FTX has been making headlines because they recently clawed back about $7 billion in assets. And they're now talking about relaunching the exchange. And all of this, meanwhile, Sam Bankman-Fried is on criminal trial in New York. So they're exploring several possibilities, including selling the entire exchange, which includes its extensive customer base of over 9 million people, to forming a partnership with another entity to revive the platform. So obviously they're just looking at, potential ways to relaunch and turn it back into a really profitable business. You got to remember that FTX was actually a pretty profitable business. You just had a really poor leader, obviously doing shady shit and spending the money and siphoning the money out of the exchange. So, outside of that, it actually was a great business. And if you consider like it was the number one competitor to Binance, and Binance just prints money. So, there's a lot of incentive for somebody to come in and try to relaunch FTX, even with the bad, publicity, probably relaunch it under a different name, which I think is kind of where it seems like they're headed here by selling the exchange and the customer base to some other entity to revive it. So, I would probably predict that, at the latest by this time next year, but most likely in the next 6 months, you're going to see some form of FTX relaunch. But I don't think it's going to be called FTX. In my personal opinion. So speaking of centralized exchanges, Binance's withdrawal system went out yesterday. CZ obviously tweeted about it. Funds are SAFU. He always says that. So the outage comes after around $100 billion was traded across all crypto venues on Tuesday, the highest volume since the FTX crash in November 2022. So, big volume is back to crypto, obviously the bull market. You can't really have a bull market without centralized exchanges crashing. I'm just surprised we haven't heard about Coinbase crashing yet. But that's all I got for today. I will see you guys tomorrow for the October 26th episode.